I'm Rick, and this is your seat at the table, and have a great morning. This is late October in Iowa. It's raining outside, kind of a gloomy day. Chilly, supposed to be in the 40s today. I'm kind of feeling my garden's about ready to crap out. Just saying. This is my last source book material for Middle Earth role playing game, as far as I know. I might have something stuck away up here somewhere that I've something missed. If I do, I definitely will add it, but to my knowledge, this is the last of the books. I have one more installment for the YouTube channel for my MERP campaign, and that is the Atlas of Middle-earth, which is not an official Iron Crown Enterprises games resource, but it's always been a fundamental addition to my MERP material. And that's why I did a video. I've done a video on it, but I will post this one prior to that one, so that will probably be next weekend for sure. And then that will conclude my Middle Earth stuff. And I hope for you Middle Earth fans who've been with my channel for the last year or two, going through all this stuff, that you continue to subscribe to the channel. As you know, we're into BattleTech right now. I've got about 5 or 6 Star Wars books left to do. And then after that, I'll focus on BattleTech for a while. Although, as the mood takes me, there's elements of these various games and things within the stories that I have interest in and have an opinion on, and occasionally will probably do videos on them. I've done some earlier in my series. You know, if you've seen my views on how come Arthur Dane failed, or how come Arnor failed, and why this, that, the other thing, while they're not necessarily pertinent to the role-playing game aspect, it's part of the love of the franchise and the genre and everything related to it. One of the things that I was really disappointed was that Iron Crown petered out when they did. That there was so many, and I know. I'm sorry if I'm dropping my ball on your name. One of my longtime subscribers who's doing reviews on his channel of his Middle Earth campaign material, and I will try to remember to add a link to his channel on mine. Him and I have talked a lot over the years about everything Middle Earth, and one of the things that we both agree on is that it's a shame that there are a lot of locations that were not covered, or covered kind of haphazardly by the material that they did do, that really was entitled to have an entire source book devoted to it specifically. And this was the beginning of what I was hoping to see a lot of. While there's no really, easily Minas Tirith, the largest human city in Middle Earth at the end of the Third Age, in Western Middle Earth, because if we go to the east and the south, there's some pretty grand cities. If you look at the role-playing games and the quote beta canon material that came out of them, there are a lot of great cities. Umbar is just one of many that truly would have been benefit having been in this particular series, and that they didn't or couldn't get to those, is a shame. And maybe the next company that's handling this stuff maybe will go there and explore places that weren't explored. The what's in the book, for the most part, is just the nuts and bolts, the workings of Minas Tirith, and the settings within it, and which makes it a great resource and kind of a bit of a dry read from an entertainment perspective. But it gives you a really good view of the city and its workings, and why it was important for a number of reasons to Gondor in general. Within Gondor, there are several fairly large cities that Pel could have easily had a book like this devoted to it. Dol Amroth, they did a credible job in the source book modules that they created, but they could have been expanded on. One that they never got around to in any great depth is Osgiliath, and that's because it's, as of 1640, Osgiliath is a dying city, and that's where most of the settings, Third Age 1640, is mostly the game settings are designed for, some 1,000-odd years prior to the Lord of the Rings and the War of the Ring. By the time of the War of the Ring, of course, as we all well know, Osgiliath is just a ruin It's nothing. It's not a city at all. It's just a ruin. But the sheer size, this was an outpost. This was a retreat for the king. Minas Tirith, Minas Arnor at the time was a secondary city when compared to Osgiliath. Osgiliath must have been truly grand and on a grand scale. It easily was 4 times bigger than Minas Tirith became at its height. It's reminiscent of the cities of the Invincible Overlord and the cities of the World Emperor that's in the really old Judges Guild material, which, if you're not aware of, I have a series of videos that I did on what's in my collection for those games that predate the lion's share of these early 80, 90 game systems, and let alone anything we got today. And it's the cornerstones or the foundation stones of the ancient ruins of those older game systems, like the original Greyhawk campaigns and the early, like I said, Judges Guild and stuff like Traveler and Space Opera, that all the current game systems are built upon, whether they want to acknowledge it or not. There's 50 years worth of stuff behind the current series of books and games and stuff. Anyway, just my opinion, right? Not that you guys really care about that stuff, it's just me rambling. So we have a fantasy game, City Supplement by Graham Staplehurst, and this was produced in 1988. This is a beautiful book. Look how well it aged, how well it held up. I took good care of it. It didn't get as extensively used as some of my other stuff. The binding and material is much grander. I mean, if you look at VASA, this stuff was falling apart within the first 5 years of purchasing it. If you used it a lot, it fell apart. This stuff it aged as well. And it's hardback. It's one of the few hardbacks in the MERP's materials, and it is very durable, very good. So we got the City of the Sun, the history of the Minas Arnor, Tale of Years, the city lands around it, the Pelennor, the Nogdicker, the Harlan, the roads, the White Mountains. There's a typical farmstead, the Anduin riverbanks. We get to flora and fauna, agriculture, fishing, herbalism, some common herbs, some rare special herbs, culture and lifestyles, home life, daily life, life customs, etiquette and dress, food and drink, spiritual life, art and architecture. Chapter 6 is commerce, the Anorians, the royal family, the noble houses, great families, the fellowships, i.e. the porters, the hostelers, lamprights, bakers, the guilds, right? It's a different version of the guilds. And it's within these that can give you an idea of what to find in other smaller towns and cities on a smaller scale. So that's one of the things that made this book an addition to being a good reference for the game resources. The bureaucracy, the administrator, royal offices, and how they operate, secret societies. Then we talk about the city overview. So we get the walls and their layout and the great gates and the guard towers, inner walls and cities, lesser gates, water supply and sewer systems, other sites, main streets, etc. Then we have buildings and note, the old guest house, the orrery house. It's a large workshop lodging that produces complex instruments for navigation, astronomy, and timekeeping, and so on. Right? So the little lock shop, Palace of Light, just goes on and on. So the other thing of things like this, when we talk about why the Numerians or later the Gondor and their men of Norma, the Westernies, are so advanced technologically speaking, they would be easily on par with late 1800 technology in many ways, and the fact that put them head and shoulders literally above everybody else in the middle earth. That makes the fact that they can produce clocks and intricate navigational equipment and had a fully functioning understanding of all this stuff. They learned a lot of this from the elves, but they built upon the technology and understand that they learned from the elves until they started to diminish, and then they lost. It's a lot of things lost. It's a big part of the story of Lord of the Rings in my mind that Tolkien put together is a story of what once was, and how much was lost, and what might once be again if things can be set right or set forward in a forward thinking way. So anyway, you just third level, second level, that kind of stuff. Or house of memorials, the chimneys, house of gold and silver. You see some of the architecture, just how vast and elaborate these buildings were. The Great Hall of the Guard, Jared the Sharps. We got some traps, examples. It's pretty convoluted. Merle's Vitrin. Merle's Vitrin is the most particular structure of recent origin, an eccentric sage with special interest in magic arts and alchemy. Merle successfully persuaded a patron of his to grant him land on the fourth city of the city. Here he built the marvelous and eccentric Vitrin. Right? It's kind of a glass tower with magic enhancements. Opposite the estates. The book is full and rich of material and stuff, and the general functioning and how the city operates, and how to bring it alive and give plenty of opportunities for places to look at and deal with. So the high courts, 7th level, the Sigil Rock, the upper barracks, the Hall of Isildur, house of the place of the fountains, White Tree, the High Hall, Tower Anorian. And we have some basic information, the city and other times, the Kinstrife, the War of the Ring, in the Fourth Age, the royal family, Denther's family, the royalty who shaped the city, the courtiers, the city's nobility, wealthy and influential. Right, so we have some adventures: The Spy from Umbar, A Riot in Wooden Town, Secret of the Ring, The Haunted House, Light Fingers and Lockpick. We have our traditional tables, the lesser NPCs, royal NPCs, venture NPCs, master military table, city guard, various captains, men at arms, formations. We have terminology. So once again, this was a really great book, and I'm sad that they didn't create more in the series. Frankly, I'm sad that ICE wasn't able to continue in the producing the wonderful stuff for the Middle Earth campaign that they did do, and expand further, because as we agree that there is so much left to have tapped into on a better scale than they did or were able to. And they learned and grew as Iron Crown developed their franchise, and they started it when they began, like any beginning, they built upon it, they improved upon it, and the lion's share of the modules and source books and Ready to Run adventures become more enhanced. They became better as they progressed, without diverging into something completely unrelated. It's one thing that Iron Crown tried to avoid. They based their basic rules and stuff off of Rollmaster, because of course that was their primary initial foray into the gaming world. They were competing with Dungeons and Dragons at that point on a very narrow margin. So the fact that they were one of the earlier game systems that had its own unique makeup mechanics wise, and they stuck to it. Yes, they did do a 2.0 version of the rules, and they did do a companion to the rules, but they really didn't try to rework the wheel. They didn't try to rebuild the cart to make it something that completely different that we see in so many franchises over the decades. And there's, now they're talking Dungeons & Dragons 5.0, now they're talking a 5.5 version or a 6.0 coming out. And I'm thinking, I just bought the 5.0 books because, like I said, they're bloody expensive, and that was a lot of money to me to invest in just a handful of books. I could not get all the books. Like back in the day when I was able to buy all this stuff, I would never be able to do that today. Just not unless I won the damn lottery. Is what it is. So, my friends, this is Rick, and I hope you've enjoyed our Middle Earth foray into things that were. If you can get any of the source books, and if you can find them, if you look into them when somebody's selling off their collection and they're selling it cheap, you do yourself a favor and grab it. Uh, those of you who are thinking about selling your stuff off, really do your research, because I understand some of this stuff's crazy expensive now. So even the older used, lesser conditioned stuff could still net you probably as much or more than what you paid for originally for them. And if that's your thing, if not, donate them to a great cause. Donate them to some outfit charity that supports the gaming industry or gamers support. Uh, Give them to the next generation, somebody who really will appreciate and take care of them. I say that now because I'm 56 years old and I'm being realistic. By the time I get into my 80s, I have to make some hard choices, because every year is a gift. Every year is a gift now. Every year of your life is a gift. Although when you're younger, you don't see that. I'm painfully aware of that now. The will come a point in time in everyone's life where our chapter comes to an end. And what do you do? How will we go out? And how will our collections be dealt with? There's nobody in my family who appreciates this stuff a tenth of what I do, let alone even understand that there's physical value in these older systems, these older books, to other collectors out there. The idea that they might just end up in boxes and thrown away just saddens me to no end. And just donating this stuff to like the local book sale or something might benefit the book sale, and then it might not, because people who really don't appreciate it may not get an opportunity for it. So, in the back of my mind, every now and then, I think of when the time comes, like Aragon, who realized when he was at the prime of his life, wanted to go home, wanted to leave the world, and much to Arwen's, you know, sadness, he wanted to do it on his terms. He didn't want to wait till he was unable to make the right decisions or the proper decisions. So when I hit a certain age, and I'm convinced that I won't be ever wanting to use any of this stuff again, this big collection of mine at some point will go someplace. Just saying. Till next time, this is Rick. You guys have a great weekend. Enjoy what's left of the October season.